Welcome to the second edition of our Coach's Corner. I guess you'd call it a special thing we're doing, obviously. And Brian Newbert did make an appearance last night and on his rap video. But we want to give a little post-game analysis of obviously Purdue's 5-point loss to Indiana. And Coach Dave Wood joins us, and we really appreciate your time. And you've walked in these shoes before. I can remember a game in 1988 when Purdue was ranked second, I believe, and went down to a very good Indiana team. Kind of a similar situation in some ways. You lost that game. It was your first Big Ten loss that year. You only lost two in the season. But again, my point is, after a tough loss like that, you can't get down 15 points. I think you guys in the game in 88 were down, 20?
33 to 12.
33 to 12 at one time. Coaches don't forget that. My point is, hard to overcome what happened in the first half yesterday in Bloomington, but Purdue almost did.
Yes, they did. That's a very difficult atmosphere to play in. You have to experience it to understand it. And Purdue really did not play very well early, especially turnovers, especially free throws, two things that have been Purdue's strengths, and that was not very good. But I think give Indiana a lot of credit. I thought their physical defense really bothered Purdue. And in the second half, Purdue played much better. Some of the emotion wore off, but you have to be there to understand. And I think Purdue's team will be better as a result.
We talked offline, but I think a very interesting comment, and not that we're focusing on teams that Purdue can't beat, but teams that Purdue has struggled with. And I thought you had an excellent insight about a game early in the year. There are three teams that you look at, the two losses and another game you're going to mention here that there may be a little bit of a common thread in terms of something. And basketball teams, it's all about, this more than anybody, it's about improvement. Today is the 5th of February. If Purdue's going to do what it wants to do this year, it's got to get better. It can't have self-actualized as a basketball team just yet. And that's part of the story. But tell us a little bit about what your perception of that, because I thought it was very interesting.
Well, I think that styles make games. And every team has a style. Every team has an identity. And when you look at the two games that Purdue has lost to Rutgers and Indiana, both of those teams are very physical, very athletic, defensive-minded teams. And then we look at the rest of the schedule, and Purdue has beaten some great teams. But if we look at one that maybe they should have lost, could have lost. Yeah. It was Marquette at Mackey Arena, and when you look at Marquette as they have evolved, and as Coach Smart is a very, very defensive minded coach.
Yeah.
Interesting. My wife and I went to a game at Marquette this year, and the score counts deflections. Mm-hmm. Enough. I've never seen a place where that was true. They count deflections, defensive deflections. Marquette relies on them, and that's probably the team that gave Purdue the most trouble before we got to the Big Ten season. And they are that style. You look at Portland, and the opponents. Purdue's opponents are West Virginia, Duke, and Gonzaga, and Purdue people, talk a lot about Duke. Everybody in the country talks about Duke and Gonzaga and those victories. But the team that gave them the most problem in Portland was West Virginia. And it's because West Virginia is a physical, defensive-minded team. That type of team is the type of team that Purdue needs to, as you say, improve. They've got to improve. They've got to find ways to beat that kind of team. They went to Michigan State and beat them? Yeah. Same type of team. But some of those are going to be coming up, and that's an interesting, I think, contrast when we talk about their next game against Iowa in a little bit.
Well, we'll go back to the Indiana game just a little bit. And I thought Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer, like you talked about, maybe had a little bit of were challenged by the physicality of it all. Indiana was kind of, for lack of a better term, beating up or certainly dealing with Lawyer in that fashion. And that's what you do as a Mike. You can't blame Mike Woodson for doing, that's what you got to do, I think, against Purdue, and prove that these guys can play. And they both did some good things. Smith made a key turnover at the end of the game that he probably would like to have back. But I guess it also, from a coach's perspective, it's all about how much they grow from this experience and what happens. What did you see from their play yesterday, though?
I think you're very accurate. I think the physicality bothered and was very effective, especially against Fletcher yesterday. But what Purdue has really done well offensively in the last month is a high ball screen, Ross-Ade on Braden Smith's man, and let him create offense, and he has been phenomenal doing that. Think about all the times he penetrates and throws the ball up, and Z's dunked it over the last month. Yeah. Well, that yielded in the lane one basket that I recall in yesterday's game. And so again, give credit to Indiana. I don't know what they did necessarily, but I think some of their physicality and their rotations stopped some of that. Braden will learn, in those situations, he made a couple of mistakes, and he'll certainly learn from that. But that's they'll continue to work that. I think Purdue will, and they will improve as a result.
You, again, as a coach, experienced it. I understand this may be a little bit of apples and oranges because you had a senior-laden team with Troy Todd and Everett in 1988. But that mental part of losing a game, even though Purdue was an underdog yesterday, people forget that, 1.5 point underdog. But how do you deal with that part of it in terms of making sure you don't turn one loss into two? And obviously Thursday night is going to be an extremely challenging game, at least on paper. Iowa is just that kind of team. Maybe not the physical nature, but they're certainly got some athletic ability on the wings and can run up and down the court on you and can shoot it from all positions. But what's the strategy from a coaching standpoint that you try to do to make dang sure that you don't turn one loss into two?
Well, you fight human nature, frankly. When you win a big one or when you lose a big one, you fight human nature. But over and over and over again during the course of the season, I'm sure Matt Painter has talked about one game at a time. Yeah. Even when the team is winning one game at a time, it's go to the next thing, move on to the next game, move on to the next game, no matter what happened, move on to the next game. And they will evaluate video and decide where some things didn't go so well and try to improve on that. But if you dwell on what happened previously, I don't care who it is, especially in the Big Ten, you're going to have a big problem. And I think it is their mantra that they move on to the next thing. Frankly, Alan, basketball is a game where you have to move on to the next thing. In baseball, you swing hard 3 times and you go back and sit down, and a half an hour later you get to try it again, right? In basketball, you got to go to the next thing right away. You don't have time to worry about whether you did something well or did something poorly in the game, because the game continues. And so that's the way the game works, and I think that's the way coaches' minds work.
Now, you talked about Iowa, and obviously Chris Murray is taking cue from his brother because he's turning into that level of a player, and maybe have that opportunity at the next level before long. Tony Perkins has a big game. They had a nip and tuck game with Illinois on Saturday that really never got more than about 5 points between the two teams throughout the course of the game. Illinois also playing well. Of course, Purdue doesn't have to play them until the 5th of March. But talk about Iowa a little bit, and again, that challenge, because yes, they don't have anybody that Purdue's got to maybe pick and choose at spots or dominate inside. But Iowa's going to be a real tussle, I would think, on Thursday night.
They are very unique in their approach. They are a freewheeling, shoot it from anywhere, like you said, score from every position on the floor. and they have been a very offensive minded team under Fran McCaffrey.
Yeah.
I think that's going to probably pay dividends for them and be a problem for them. This is a very unique matchup because there's no way Iowa's going to, I don't think, effectively guard Zach-Edey.
Yeah,
and they're going to really struggle with that. But it's going to be a challenge for Purdue to guard Iowa. Yeah. A big key is I think keeping them out of the lane on penetration, because when they create rotations, it's very difficult to get to their shooters. They share the ball. They are all very confident. It's interesting, as I watched them a couple times early on. The one guy I thought that maybe we could back off of a little bit was Tony Perkins.
Yeah.
And he gets 32 yesterday, so he's certainly on a roll now. But it's going to be Purdue's power inside against Iowa's freewheeling, free-flowing offense. The other interesting, when you contrast yesterday's game with what's about to happen, Purdue had a lot of turnovers and they had a lot of live ball turnovers.
Right.
Turn the ball over in live ball situations against Iowa, and you're going to be in big trouble.
Yeah, it's going to be that way in terms of that. It will be a very interesting game in Mackey Arena on Thursday night, and one that Purdue's still in good shape and still really good shape with respect to the Big Ten. But I think it's also interesting when you look at Rutgers, you look at Illinois, you look at Indiana, you look at Iowa. I understand only one of those teams right now, I believe, is ranked, and Rutgers came back to beat Michigan State after a very poor first half yesterday. My point is, those are four really dangerous teams come NCAA tournament time. I mean, it's the Big Ten and dangerous teams for Purdue from now through the Big Ten tournament. I mean, all five of those teams, in my view, could win the Big Ten tournament once you get to March.
No question. And all five of those teams could make noise in the NCAA tournament. Like I said, the Big Ten, I don't know. I think it may be because Purdue's been really dominant and everybody else is beating each other that nationwide they haven't gotten the respect that they deserve. But as this thing plays out, I think the country's going to find out that the Big Ten is solid and has a lot of good teams top to bottom. That's going to be a lot of fun going forward.
Yeah, I think with Purdue too is that Purdue's been able to remain whole for the most part with injuries. Indiana has had a couple big injuries. They've Race Thompson did come back, but didn't really have a big role in yesterday's game. Though a guy well, Trey Galloway really played well in that contest. But Illinois
Agreed.
had a couple. Matt Meyer didn't play against Indiana. This is and Iowa's had some with McCaffrey being out for a while too. My point is, once all these teams get whole, you just have to hope, if you're a Purdue fan, that Purdue can remain that way. But it's just not going to. My point is, there's no cakewalk for Purdue, despite Purdue's only having 2 losses in the Big Ten. It's going to be a challenge all the way through, no matter how far Purdue goes in the NCAA tournament. It's just that's the nature of college basketball.
There are a lot of good teams in the country. I think the big thing with this year is there is no dominant team. There are a lot of really good teams that do it different ways, and that's going to be a lot of fun when we get to March for sure.
All right, Coach, thanks so much for your time today. Working on Sunday, we appreciate that, and always your insight. Very well done. We'll look forward to more we'll be back in on Friday after the Iowa game, and looking ahead to another interesting game as Purdue will play Northwestern on Super Bowl Sunday. Another very interesting, different style team that on paper shouldn't be a problem for Purdue, but Boo Booey and others can do big things. That's what's fun.
But is the only team that's beaten Indiana on their home court this year.
Exactly. And I guess that's my whole point too. And I understand in Purdue world, there's a lot of gnashing of teeth when you lose to your rival and you had a chance to come back. But man, enjoy the ride. This is fun basketball, and there's interesting basketball. And I think it's going to be that way for Purdue and for a lot of other teams all the way up into the first week of April.
Absolutely.
All right.
Agree with
Thanks
you
so much,
totally.
Coach. And we'll look forward to another edition of this next on Friday. And for the rest of you, enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Or if you're watching this early on Monday, have a great week, everybody. Thanks again.